ones that they've been using, and I
Hard
think
drives or SSDs?
SSDs.
Oh, I use nothing but Samsung Evo.
Okay.
And I use both an external and an internal. The internal that I've got now came with the computer. It's a no-name Bywin, and it's just crap. So there's a big difference in quality between no-name and Samsung.
Right. Same for you, Sid? You're not.
I've been using a mix of Samsung and Intels. I have some Intels that have been running forever. I have one in an old server was a really old one, and it's been running for at least 7 or 8 years now.
Sid, I'd said the same thing. I got one in my server. It's like an Intel. It's like 10 years old, and it just hums along.
Cool.
Except being an SSD, it doesn't hum much. But yeah, I know what you mean.
I've got Samsungs going back to 740s. I didn't have a 30. I've got 850s, 860s. I have not looked at the 70s. I've got at least one system with, I don't remember if it's a 960 or a 970. And I do have a smattering of old systems with miscellaneous ones from Seagate. I think one's got an Intel in it and a few others.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, for hard drives, I've usually, for the most part, I've gravitated to the Western Digital black or red, the ones without the perpendicular recording, the ones with the conventional recording.
Right.
Those have always served me well. I had a Seagate in an early Windows XP machine that I had, which failed way before its time. It wasn't the one that came with it. It was an add-on drive, so I really didn't use it that much. Used it for video storage. And it started making noise on the bearing, and I had Seagate replace it under warranty. Of course, the data was not recoverable, but they sent me a new drive, and I ended up replacing that with a Western Digital drive. That was just a green that I put in place of it, and never had a problem with that one since. But the the Seagate 500 gig drive went into a USB cradle and used for a backup for a long while.
Well, the only thing I'm using spinning drives for right now is either data storage inside the system, or I'm using it on systems, especially old laptop spinning groups.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you recording, Tim, or should I do a record? Earth to Tim. Are you recording, or should I record?
I am recording.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure you're already recording. Otherwise, I was going to set another record, but if you're already recording, that should be sufficient. Just checking.
Okay.
I take it you're not using the Zoom. If you were using the Zoom record.
Correct.
Yeah, we should be told if somebody's going to do that outside of Zoom.
Yeah.
But anyway, we now know, and this is good. And I would not have changed anything I said, even if I knew.
No, I wouldn't either. I figure in any meeting you're online, you should only say stuff that you would be proud to say and willing to stand up for, if it's recorded or not.
Right. WD versus Seagate. Internal, I've only ever done a replacement with a WD, and I think it was a WD Black. And it was on a laptop, and it worked very well, much better than the original. The original, I think, was a Toshiba drive, and it was a Toshiba laptop. Mm-hmm. Externals, I've had good luck with both WD and Seagate. Mm-hmm. Toshiba, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, one of my other machines that is going on 10 years old has an old Hitachi drive in it. Yeah. Which became Western Digital. So yeah. HGST, I think that's what they call them. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the only peculiar thing I had been wary of when I had some of the other different brands of drives is if the person was using one of the drive supplied free Acronis copies, and you wanted to change the drive out, well, you have to have the same manufacturer, otherwise the standalone Acronis won't play.
Right. All the more reason to upgrade.
Oh yeah, cheap enough.
Sid was showing us something.
Pardon?
It's not a Focus, but it was something.
Samsung Drive that he's got there, but I don't know which model.
Uh-oh, there, he's down here, back, forth. There he is. Not getting any
sound.
audio. There.
No sound, Sid.
You changed your microphone, Sid?
Maybe
Yeah, there he goes.
All right, and I have a microphone now. Woo! I
There we go.
like being a. Somebody said, "Why do I want to be a disc jockey?" It's with the hand mic, but that's a separate story. I don't know. I stock up, so I've got this guy, and I've got this guy, and I've got this guy,
They're paper boxes.
and I've got this guy,
More
and I've
boxes.
got this guy.
That's a lot of boxes.
That's a
Yeah,
lot of
those are
boxes.
Samsungs.
Those
Yeah.
are all drives that have never been taken out of the box.
I'm guilty of doing that. I have a backup 5 terabyte Seagate that I haven't opened the package on yet, but
Yeah.
it's coming soon.
Well,
I just got
they're all things I've won at trade shows. So
Oh,
it just
cool.
sort of like this guy that just says fourth quarter, not for retail sale. This is it's actually has a property of Samsung sticker on it. I asked him about that at the time. I said, "Wait, I won a drive that says property of Samsung?" Said, "Don't worry about it."
It was just a promo item. A promo
Yeah,
item.
well, evidently they were given to the sales guys,
Mhm.
and so they used it for a drawing, but it was for the sales guys originally, not for passing on, and that's why that sticker's there.
Oh, it's reported as 4 terabyte, but it's really only 1.
I don't just
Do they
to
do that?
go on this subject. We were talking about stability and brands of these things. My understanding is the brand isn't as important as not overfilling the things.
Right.
You should over provision. If you
Right.
over provision, then you've got some spares.
Right.
Yeah. Not only that, the over provisioning means that a small part of the drive on the back end, you do not format, you do not partition, you just leave it raw. And you're probably talking based upon a terabyte, I'd do at least 16 to 32 gigs of space. Just for over provisioning.
Samsung Magician software will handle that for you. And it comes up about what you're saying, Tim.
Yeah, the only thing with the over provisioning is the software that's built into the Samsung drives and a few other makers' SSDs. If they start seeing bad cells, they use that raw space in the over provisioning area as substitutes, just like bad spots on a spinning hard drive have a reserved area. The bad part on a spinning drive, it's built in to the whole capacity of the drive, whereas with an SSD, you have to subtract the space out from your raw storage.
I just related to that because you're saying something I never thought about. I always thought the controllers reserved that extra space on their own, and I didn't have to do that. You seem to be saying you need to do it yourself.
It varies from brand to brand and model to model. Samsung, you have to run their software, Samsung Magician, and set it up. And you can also set up performance things. But it only works under Windows.
So after you've over provisioned it, you can then reformat it with impunity, and it'll leave it to that same format.
No.
No. It has nothing to do with formatting. It has to do with performance, I said.
Okay.
with sensor
Oh,
acquisition.
okay. So because normally when you over provision, you're setting aside certain areas of the disk for reserve areas to be used as spare or alternate locations for the locations that have gone bad.
Yeah, yeah.
That's correct.
So normally that's done and I remember the old IOMEC 14-inch platters and the 50 megabyte drives where you had to reserve so many tracks available when you formatted it. But the question is, what happens when you want to install a new copy of Windows and it says, do you want me to format it? You would have to say no and just let it use the existing size after you've over provisioned it.
Yes and no.
Pretty much yes, in a way, because bottom line is you have, when you're doing a clean install of Windows, yes, it's going to wipe out everything. Otherwise, it stays within the partitions you already set up. So
Okay.
if you do a complete wipe of the drive and do a clean install, then you have to install partition, not partition manager, Samsung's Magician on and re-over provision it. Then it'll work just fine, just like it was before you wiped it out.
I know because in other types of drives, you could always add additional bad track areas or overlay track. But the problem that you ran into with the hard drives was every time you would go to the track that had been spared out, you would incur the seek across the disk to wherever the bad track area was. And that would, you take a performance hit. And you didn't want more than 3 or 4 tracks before you just said, okay, reformat, mark these as bad, and don't use them when you store anything here in the future, instead of using it as an alternate location.
Well, that's why the manufacturers began reserving an area that I believe it's at the beginning of the drive and where there would be minimal movement.
Well, there's no movement in on an SSD, so they can mark it out. And as long as the controller remembers where the spare is, he's good.
Right.
Well,
I was talking about mechanical hard drives.
Well, mechanical ones, what
They've
they did with some of the mechanical, depending on how you partitioned it, sometimes they would reserve bad tracks near the middle of the partition, because then your time to access a defect, because your head is normally near the middle of the disk on average, is minimal as well. So you could do it both ways. I mean, there are ways to, as long as it's marked as bad, and the bad track assignment logic, when the controller was used to reassign a bad track, knew where to grab it from, you were good. I used to write disk drivers.
Well, see, the drives built in to some degree. Some did allow expansion. Most didn't take advantage of. And but in SSDs, there's no provisioning in there. You have to be smart enough to put the over provisioning in, and then it'll take advantage of it.
Yes. Samsung Magician.
Yeah. So that works well under Windows. I'm not sure how well leaving a little extra space would be utilized under, let's say, Linux. It probably depends on the distro.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think it also depends upon the manufacturer's controller inside. If it's got a blank space, it may still take advantage of it for the same reason.
So the controller might handle it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Sid.
New subject. Did anybody else get a Comcast toy? I got a new Comcast toy. They sent me an email, actually an email and a text saying, you need to replace your modem. It's too slow. And because they upped my speed to 600 now from 400. I didn't ask for that. They just did the up. And evidently the old modem couldn't handle 600. So I got today, the new one arrived. It's like a cube. And it has space for the 2 phone lines and the 4 ports and the coax connector on it. I didn't look yet if there's a place to put a battery in it. I didn't notice that.
Sid, they call that XFi, and it's their new style, and it does have capability up to 1 gigabit, and you do still have the ports. I don't think it has internal battery. You have to supply your own UPS.
Yeah, well, the old one, you had to supply your own battery, but it actually had a spot in it to install a battery in it and hook the wire to it.
Some did, some didn't. Mine didn't.
Yeah, my old one did. What's funny is the box has a replacement peel off stick on cover to mail your old one back, and the old one is twice as large. I'd have to break it in half to actually put it in their box. It's not going in their box, but it's kind of cute that they did that.
Well, you should have saved the original box.
Yeah, right. Well,
I did.
One of the nice things they do is you can print the label, bring it into the UPS store, and I live 2 blocks from a UPS store. You don't need a box or anything.
Yeah.
They handle packaging it up and sending it in. So,
In the Boston area, we got you beat. They have Xfinity retail stores, and you just bring it in person.
we do here as well, but that's about 4 miles away. And as I said, the UPS store is 2 blocks away. So therefore, why not just let Comcast picks up the shipping? So what do I care of going 4 miles away instead of 2 blocks away? So
everything's closer in the Boston area, so we only go like about across the cow path down the next one.
Oh, but your toy still costs you because they cranked up the rental on it.
I was also going to add the other gift from them was the January price rise. All of a sudden, my monthly for January was $326.
Wow. You must
I don't feel so bad. Yeah, I'm not. You must be missing out on something.
2 boxes and 2 phone lines, and every channel they have except the foreign language stuff.
And
I
got a lot of
I don't have the Playboy channel.
You got a big package.
Yeah, and I don't have the dog channel. And yes, they actually have a dog channel, which is an extra pay channel. I'm too cheap to buy that for Zerpy. She's on her own. Forget about that one. And real quick, Kathy, I was thinking of you the last couple of weeks.
You were good or bad?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, yes.
I decided to pick up a new notebook, and I followed what I told you, and I bought the LG.
Did you?
I did. It was on special through the end of the year at Costco. It was $400 off. So it was $1,100, and I'm looking at it, and there's 2 models in the same row there at Costco and Bloomingdale. And I'm looking at them, and I grab the cards from each, and I'm comparing, and they're virtually identical, and the price is 2 cents apart between them. One is a 97er, which is their closeout price, and the other's the regular 99er. Well, it just so happened there was a guy in the aisle who works for Microsoft. And he goes to the Costco's to answer questions and train the people there on the stuff. And I'm talking to him about it. And he said, well, here's the thing. The reason they're 2 cents apart is the new one is $400 off right now. The other one that's 2 cents less is the prior year's model. And so I said, so for 2 cents, was there any reason I would want last year's model? And he said, I can't think of a reason. The only reason is the new one comes with Windows 11 and the old one still has Windows 10 on it.
Oh, okay.
But the drive's the same size. The screen is the same. The processor is pretty much the same. It's a bit faster processor in the newer one, but I'm just looking at that. And it's 2 cents apart. I'm going, what's the catch here? And so I decided to pick it up. It's weird to get a 17-inch notebook with 16 gig of memory in it that will run for 12 hours on battery and weighs 2.85 pounds total.
Wow.
What processor is it based on?
Say that again?
What processor is it based on?
It is the new generation Intel.
So
12?
8 processors, 16 cores, I believe it is.
Yeah, Adler Lake. That's 12th generation.
12th gen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It,
I've got
yeah.
11th gen. I've got 11th gen Panther Canyon in Nuck.
I was, so it's fairly fast. It's 2560 by 18 whatever resolution. And it's a really bright screen compared to the older 17 next to it. It looks so much brighter. How
And
much?
it-
Go
And
ahead.
it's a Windows 11. It's a Windows 11. Notebook.
It is. It comes with 11 already installed. It's an 11 home, and I'll change it up to a Pro.
Yeah, definitely get it up to Pro.
Yeah.
So many reasons.
Well, my reasons basically, I do have external drives running BitLocker, and
Yeah.
and so I use it for that and all. But I don't have a domain, so I don't really need it for that. But I also do remote into other machines, and you need Pro if you want to use Microsoft solution. I've also just gone ahead on other machines and just used Chrome Remote Desktop, which will do sort of the same thing. It's a little kludgier, but it sort of gets you the same place.
Another thing I like about Pro is the availability of group policies. So if you don't want a feature update, you can put it off for quite a while.
Oh, you had Windows 11 with this. By any chance, did you have any problems installing Firefox on Windows 11?
I did not, but then I run portable apps, and my Firefox is run through portable apps, so it's not installed.
Okay, that's probably why you didn't see any problems with it, because I had to set up a Windows 11 for one of our preschool teachers, and because the preschool board decided to buy this machine at Costco, and it came with Windows 11 on an HP.
Yeah.
And when I went to install Firefox, it was complaining about DLLs that were missing, and it would hang and have a blank screen. And reinstalling it wouldn't help. So I ended up leaving it off for now until that can be figured out. I had to turn over the machine relatively quickly. I just wondered if anyone else saw that.
I'm running 11 right now on the machine that you're looking at me at. And I have Firefox, Chrome, Edge Chromium base.
Was it a clean install or did you upgrade?
This was a clean install of 11 at the time of, I'm an insider. So this was pre-release. I think it was back in July.
Right. Well, it's just like something was missing and it was complaining about this DLL. Like, okay, if you don't have the DLL, normally you go ahead and get it, but I wasn't sure if there was a permission problem with him not being able to use it. I couldn't find the DLL.
Well, Ed, I can tell you what Fred Langa of Windows Secrets says about this.
Yeah.
There are missing DLLs in the current Windows 11. And it's not just things like Firefox that are having problems. There is hardware. Yeah. There's hardware that's having problems. Some people are having network connection problems. There's some work to be done. There's a few. There's a few nuts and bolts they left out.
Well, I hate it when that happens.
If you wanted to make Firefox your default browser, Edge wouldn't let you do it for quite a while. Now they're relenting, but they're saying under certain conditions, instead of bringing up Firefox, say on thank you for installing software, it may bring up Edge Chromium base, even though you set Firefox as the default browser.
Yeah, but my problem is not a default. It's just I have some equipment which happens to be a Honeywell security system, which the interface only plays well with Firefox.
Okay.
It's like there's a bug in some of the internal web pages on the Honeywell where I get a waiting error of some sort and I'm trying to access and I think, okay, that just means it's incompatible with the Chromium browsers. So I just would use Firefox for that.
You do have a fairly long list, even if that 11 is totally up to date. problems that they're working on, but they don't. If they changed it, it'll be somewhere in the summer. They're going to do the once a year upgrade. Same for 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be later in the year, but yes.
I mean, I use the same distribution that I installed on my Win 10 machine here, the same 64-bit Firefox, and tried to install it there. That didn't play. I also had some issues with a 32-bit version of Office that I was installing, 2016 Office, where it said, you're trying to install the 32-bit edition. I said, no, I'm not. I'm installing the 64-bit edition. And it gave me gas about that. And I downloaded another copy, and then I have to deal with the fact that the Microsoft donation wants to have a specific type of email address now if you want to be able to still download your stuff. And I got 7 more downloads left before I get shot.
Just related, there's a sticker on this new machine that says Intel Evo. What does that mean?
Intel Evo?
I think that's the graphics processor.
It's the graphics processor.
Yes.
No, it's not, because the graphics one says Intel Iris.
Okay.
No.
And
No,
there's
that's your
this-
camera.
Yeah, it
Iris,
says Intel Evo powered by Core i7 is what the
Okay.
sticker says.
Intel Evo is an Intel thing, and it does have to do with the processor and some features of it. Iris was, I believe, who was my graphic? Oh yeah, Iris is an Intel graphics. It's the Intel graphics. So yes,
Iris
it could very well be.
XE, Iris XE graphics and
Yeah.
Intel Core processor. And when you put them together, they call it Evo.
Oh, I see.
It's all marketing.
Yeah. So it's the combination of features. I like the same graphics that I have in the Panther Canyon,
Yeah.
but they add something else.
Okay,
Mishka Mushka Musketeer.
thanks. I saw that. I didn't know. The other weird sticker on there is an Alexa sticker, which is built into this machine.
Mine too. Some Intel processors have Alexa as part of their system on a chip driver, SoC.
And I thought they'd fix the problem, but I was on a Zoom thing the other day and the presenter used the A word and my speaker went off to it.
I don't know. It must like their voice.
I'm sure. Yeah, there's got to be more than one of those too.
Last quickie. What's really weird is for some reason, whatever shirt you're wearing is color keying. So your head keeps floating there.
Yeah, well, it's a dark olive, and I have a light green and behind me, and I have a dark olive on, and it seems to
It's
think
funny.
it's green.
I didn't notice that until you said that.
Here, let's do this. I got it. This is too good to not deal with, but I'm going to share this.
His head's being manipulated by the cat.
Yes, here you go.
Amazon Echo has everyone asking Alexa for help.
Alyssa, what time is it? What the hell is wrong with this blasted thing?
But the latest technology isn't always easy to use for people of a certain age.
She has bought me a busted machine again. On Cessna.
That's why Amazon partnered with AARP to present the new Amazon Echo Silver, the only smart speaker device designed specifically to be used by the greatest generation. It's super loud and responds to any name even remotely close to Alexa. So they can find
Allegra, what is the weather outside?
It is 74 degrees and sunny.
Huh?
It is 74 degrees and sunny.
Where?
Outside.
What about it?
The temperature outside is 74 degrees and sunny.
I don't know about that.
sports.
Correct. How many did old Satchel strike out last night?
Satchel Paige died in 1982.
He did.
Satchel Paige is dead.
It's what now?
Died.
Who did?
Satchel Paige.
I don't know about that.
Local top goal.
Anita, what the boys up to across the street?
They are just playing.
They what now?
They are just playing.
You say they just playing now?
Yes, they are just playing.
I don't know about that.
Devices like your thermostat.
Alessandra, turn the heat up.
The room is already 100 degrees.
Alice,
The new Amazon Echo Silver plays all the music they loved when they were young.
Angela played black jazz.
Playing jazz.
It also has a quick scan feature to help them find things.
Emilia, where did I put the phone?
The phone is in your right hand.
And it has an feature for long rambling stories.
So then I gave him $5, and he said I only gave him $1. I said I know I gave you a $5 because I only had a 5 and a 1 on me. And this is $1 right here. So I mean, you tell me who's crazy.
Amazon Echo Silver. Get yours today. I said get yours today. To order Amazon Echo Silver, send a check or money order to Amazon.com.
I want one.
Okay.
That was great.
I want one just because it says
Yeah.
There you go. I did come across an article which I put the link in chat, which has a roundup of every current command that you can use. And one of them is the A word, help me wash my hands, which will do 20 seconds of her doing a rap for hand washing.
There's some strange things you can get out of your home assistant as well. I mean, I've asked it some strange things, and I know somebody had coded that in there specifically because it was just too weird. Yeah. All right. Sorry to distract all of you, but I thought that was too good not to share.
That was great.
I saw that was shared on a friend's website. She's a little younger than us, but it was classic. So other questions? Kathy, did you bring any questions?
I'm not ready with a question. I'm formulating a question about backing up data, but I need to gather some information before I can actually ask an intelligent question. So next month I'll have the question ready.
Okay. All right. And that's just remember in backups, do it often.
Yes.
And make multiple copies, just like voting. That's what Sid's saying, 5 backups.
No, well, I wouldn't go against that. What always bugged me is I knew too many people who were so cheap, they didn't want more than one back copy. And when they had problems, the backup got corrupted along with the system, and they had no clean one to go back to.
Yeah, never back up on your latest copy.
Yeah, I had one client, they didn't want to ever get more than 5 tapes back in the old tape day, and they wore the tapes out. So it was spinning at night, but it wasn't recorded. The tape wasn't actually recording anything. And I went in there and I said, you do realize that the backup is properly running every night. It's just not actually backing up anything. And they said, well, we don't want to spend the money on more tapes. And I was thinking to myself, this is great. When it all dies, I'm going to earn big bucks recovering your data more than you would have paid for those tapes. But whatever excites you, go for it.
But that's a big spender that you had there. I had a company I worked for, and I got PC tech support for the company. And they had a problem with their backups. They needed information off of a tape, and found out they only have a single tape from way back whenever that computer was installed in their business. And there was absolutely nothing on that thing. It went through the motions like you're talking about, but you had absolutely nothing to go back to. And I said, you're SOL.
I mean, I have a similar thing where I worked for Motorola, and when we absorbed Symbol, some of the people in the remote symbol locations that were doing development had their own way of doing their development. They like to do subversion all the time, and that's what they had, subversion servers. Were any of these things backed up? Not always. It just so happens that one of the servers that they had that was for a current product that had all of the source code repositories died. And they lost everything for that product other than a few copies that had been archived independently by one of the developers.
Well, the funniest thing of this, they didn't want to spend the money on tapes, but part of the system they bought was a 5-disc changer that was over $3,000 at the time. So they spent over $3,000 on this 5 cartridge changer, but they didn't want to spend money on tapes.
Yeah. Well, back when was this? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I am going to have a question. I have to go get my other computer and boot it up though, so it's going to be a few minutes. I'll be back.
Okay.
Well, she's coming back. If you remember last month, I said the library was booking rooms again, and we were booked for January. That's been canceled now. I polled the membership, and it was 100% vote for going back to virtual. Not one member wanted to do an in-person in January. So,
well, there's still that thing called Omicron that's going around.
Don't wait for me. This is going to take a while.
Did somebody do the theme from Jeopardy while she's booting?
I'm busily posting.
Sid, you could donate one of those extra SSDs to Kathy. She could probably use one in that old computer.
Yeah. By the way, while all this is going on, I am posting where you can find out what the Intel Evo platform is.
As long as it's an 11th generation.
Actually, it's 12th gen.
Oh, it's only 12. Okay.
It was 11th gen where they invented the term, but now it's only 12th gen.
Okay.
Because it's their premium product line.
Uh-huh.
And there it is.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm still booting up.
Oh, it's going to take a while. How old is this machine? XP? No.
That would be fast by comparison to 10 or 11 on that old machine.
This was, let me think. I think this computer, well, it was a Windows 7 computer. I think I bought it in 2012 maybe, but I had it refurbished and upgraded to Windows 10, and I had a new SSD drive put in it. So, and it's got its limits, and I can't tell you all the technical stuff behind the scenes, but it's got older chips and things, or so I've been told. So it's upgraded to the extent that it can be upgraded. But
so, Kathy, do you think it would like to run on Linux if you knew how?
The machine wouldn't mind it, but I don't think she'd be able to do anything with it.
I'm afraid some users wouldn't, but it's not a matter of using it. It's a matter of, can you install, can you do other things?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you want to use the machine for. If a machine is no longer got any of the current stuff and you're not using it to hold old copies of documents and data files, and you want to use it for something else, it's perfectly legitimate to try and use a newer version of Linux as far as the hardware will support it. I mean, you may be limited as to what versions you can load on it, but that makes is a lot less demanding on the hardware requirements of the system.
But the question is, can the end user support it?
That's a good question.
This end user can't.
That's what I'm saying. Some people can, some people can't.
If you can use a Chromebook, you can use Linux.
You can use, but trying to install and maintain it is a different matter. Troubleshooting can get very tricky.
Yes, it can.
Right.
I'm still working on it. I've got a system. I've been trying to figure out a problem, and then I get busy and I have to stop, and I almost have to start it again and again and again. And I'm finally cracked it. It turned out to be a graphics card that was going flaky. And this system has 2 solid state drives, 2 versions of Windows, one on each of the drives, and 4 X's on each drive. Total of 10 OSs. And I was having a nightmare because just because the graphics card failed, you couldn't get a whole bunch of the OSs to ever boot up, let alone to update them. Now that I've figured out what it was, pulled out that graphics card, stuck some graphics card I happen to have in it, so far working fine. I'm through half the OS right now, upgrading them. I've got the other half to go.
Point is, Kathy, you're probably better off leaving well enough alone.
I think I'll leave well enough alone. Yeah, maybe the system could handle it, but nah, this old girl couldn't handle it.
On some of my machines, what I've done is I've basically turned the data contents into a virtual machine, and I've saved the virtual machine in case I want to get anything off of it. So I can just, okay, fire up that virtual machine. As long as that's still supported, I can go into it. If you have a problem because you had to install a new copy of Windows or something, you can, with VirtualBox, you can unsynchronize from the system clock. So that means only when you go into the virtual machine is it actually counting against your 30 days. So 30 days can turn into years.
Okay, so it's booted up. And I think I formulated this question. I'll still have a question next month, but for this question, so what I have is I'm looking at the C drive, and okay, I see under C it says user and it says owner, but that's not where I store my data. I actually have a folder called Kathy, so it's a folder called Kathy under C, not a folder called Kathy under users under C. Is that a bad thing?
No.
It's not conventional, but it's not a bad thing. It means that something that's going to back up just your user area is not normally going to see that thing unless you're doing a larger backup.
Okay.
If you do an image backup, it takes care of copying the entire drive, all the partitions you cannot see outside of C. But at the same time, too, if you want your data, you have to do the documents folder, that Kathy folder that you created, and you have to do it per user because of the way things are split up.
Yeah.
So wait, so what kind of backup would I be doing if I wanted to make sure I back up the current Kathy folder? What kind of backup would I be doing?
You can use any backup software on individual partitions or individual files. But if you want to have, say, all of C, usually you do a whole image of the drive. Image, I use Macrim Reflex. Some people use Protus. There are a bunch of other ones out there. EasyUs to do backup and things like that. Some of them are very simple, but the key is when you do a backup, you have to have a methodology of verification. Now, modern ones usually have either a automatic verification on versions like my Macrim Reflect. every time I do a backup, I have to go into advanced features, put a check mark into auto verify. As soon as the backup's done, it automatically verifies it. I've never had a failure for, I don't know how many years I've been using this particular piece of software. Whereas in the past, a lot of people that did do backups never did any form of verification of the backup when they were done with the backup to find out, is the backup that I just created any good? And usually when they needed the backup, that's when they found out, oh, your backup when this was made wasn't successful. Your backup file is all corrupt.
Wow.
Yeah, verification is important. And even in Linux, when you use a really simple backup program like Clonezilla, it also is usually set up to check the image, make sure it can be restored.
That's right.
And in Clonezilla, I think it's just doing a checksum.
Yeah, generally that's all it is on free versions. Some of the paid versions of software for backup, once you set it up for verify, it keeps a memory of it versus having to put a check in the auto verify feature every time you do a backup. I just don't even think about it.
My Mac Memory free, if I set up a backup routine and save the backup routine, it will save it as an XML file and everything is there.
Yes, and you can put that on a scheduler.
No, in the free edition, I don't think you can schedule it. However, you can run it and run it interactively, whatever.
Yeah, but you can set up in a scheduler to run that XML file by itself.
So you can set up a Windows task?
Yeah, but I got too lazy to bother doing it. I just do it when I've got time, and that's it. When it's done, it's done.
Now, Kathy, your stuff on Drive C, you only want to record, you only wanted to save a copy of everything in that Kathy folder and all the subdirectories?
I think I want multiple things. I mean, right now, all of my data is in the Kathy folder.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not true. I have I have another Kathy folder. It's called Kathy's cell phone backup because I'm running out of space on my cell phone, and I was going out of town and I didn't have any time to do anything, but I backed up all the data. Oh, I'm sorry. I backed up. I can't remember if it was all the data or just all the pictures from my cell phone. I created a folder on this computer called Kathy Cell Phone Backup, and I threw everything out there, and then I just started deleting some stuff off my cell phone so I could take some pictures while I was out of town. But I don't plan to keep the cell phone backup on this computer.
Is it on Drive C as well?
It is on Drive C as well.
In the root directory?
In the root directory.
Yeah. There's a free utility that is familiar to all the people that run Linux. It's called tar. And tar exists on Windows 10. It's in the command prompt. So you could look at experimenting with how tar can create a file. But basically, I like to use verbose and specify the file where it's going to be. So I would CD into the directory I want and make what's called a referential tar from the current directory on. That means I can restore it in any other directory rather than having an absolute directory. So if you are in the current directory and you do a tar-cvf and have the file name of where you want to put it, and collect and star after that, star dot, whatever you want to put behind it, that'll include all of your files. And you can actually tell it to traverse everything and put it all into one big file. And then you can zip that file down if you want, or you can do other things with it.
Okay.
So, tar exists.
I mean, is it better for me to actually move that data from the root from Kathy in the root directory to users or owner users? Wait,
No,
users owner?
You could move it if you want, but as long as everything that you used is that expects it there has to be changed to say, go look for it here instead.
Yeah, the other thing is what you can do is the folder called documents. That's the normal location. It expects to find your documents for backing up independently from a full system backup. All you'd have to do is in the root directory of C, you drag and drop those directories to the documents directory of the current login. So if you're in a user account, it goes into that user's named account under user. If you're in the administrator's account, it does the same thing to the administrator's account. But you have two potential areas that have to be backed up unless you take and back up the user directory in the root by itself. And then you have to figure out how you're going to restore it before you do it so that you can get to what you want without screwing up your system.
If it'll fit on the flash drive, put a copy over there.
Yeah.
Is it more than 32 gigs?
32? They got 512s now.
I know they do, but they anything over 256, you take your chance. And he had 2 terabyte ones for a long time, but those were only 16 gig. Yes, Sanford.
Another place that I would put it would be on your desktop.
Yeah, desktop works too.
If you put it on your desktop, it will get backed up.
Oh, you mean put
that Kathy folder on your desktop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anything you put in your desktop will get backed up also.
Now, if you have enough room, you can do a copy of it, or if you do a drag and drop, it's going to move it. Okay, so drag and drop is going to infer a cut and a paste, and it'll move it to the desktop, and it'll move real quick because it's all on the same drive. If it goes across drives, it'll make copies.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time, Ed?
If you drag and drop on the same physical partition drive, it will just move it in place. All they'll do is a directory operation and change where the parent directory is and update it. If you move it to a different hard drive, it'll make a copy.
Okay.
Then you'll have 2, and then you got to make sure which one is the old, which one's the new. And if you're going to make a copy, rename one so that you don't know everything that tries to look for it in the old place doesn't get it. It's got to go ask where the new place is.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about using the backup feature in Windows to do my backups?
Depends on which version of Windows and whether you still have it.
The backup is there even in 10, but it's Windows 7 backup. If you found Windows 7's backup to be reliable and verifiable, you're fine. If you cannot feel comfortable with its reliability and verification, you're on your own.
Okay, so I have Windows 10 on all my computers. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that even though I have Windows 10, the Windows backup is really what was Windows 7 backup?
That's correct. And that was true in 8 in all versions of 10. And I'm pretty sure I didn't check it out, I'm pretty sure it's still the same thing in 11. It's Microsoft says that's as far as we're going on the backup utility. You have to feel comfortable that it's reliable, and you also have to have to make sure that it's verified, whether it's done by the program, by you saying, I want verification, or B, you have to use a real old method called manually storing individual files and folders that are real small. If they work, odds are your backup is okay. If you can't restore those little folders and files, you got a corrupt backup, delete it, and try again. And you keep on trying till you get it verified by restore of those particular files.
And then the other question you want to ask is, if you're looking at backup programs, what backup programs can I run when the hardware fails and I have to replace a hard drive and I got a bare metal restore?
Yeah, and now on those, you would have to install Windows 10 first in order to have the restore capability to restore those image backups. With most other third-party software, you have some kind of rescue media. Cronus, at least, used to have come out on a CD, DVD, and it acted as a recovery media. My Macrim Reflect and many others that you download off the internet, you have an option in there to create a rescue USB drive. You take a small drive, maybe an old one that you USB 2, and you say, I've got nothing of value on this drive. It wipes it out and puts the rescue media in there. My Macrim Reflect fits inside of a 512 megabyte USB 2 type drive. And I still have 100 megabytes left of space. That's how small the rescue media is.
Wow.
Well, did Cronus change in 2022 to not being able to make bootable media? Because my Cronus 2021 still has the option for bootable media, but the question is, which one do you want to choose? Do you want the Linux or do you want the WinPE version? And you better choose correctly.
With I use it on Linux, I use it on Windows, and I've used it on Mac.
Well, I mean, I have the Linux, I almost always use the Linux version when I'm doing cold metal restores.
Okay. Well, offhand, there's no distinction in Macrim Reflect's rescue media. It is a Linux OS that just brings up a copy of the Macrim Reflect backup restore. It defaults to the restore, but if you click on the backup tab, you can do a backup without having to run it from within the running system.
Tim, the boot rescue media from Macrim Reflect Free by default is WinPE or WinRE. And it can restore Linux, but it does it from within that.
Well, the one I happen to have, and I don't know why, then it has a Linux kernel in it.
Well, maybe there are different ones. I'm talking about Macrim Reflect Free version 8 that I just simply download, and it gives you it actually gives you a choice, but you choose which type of media you want to make. And I think it is possible to make the Linux based, but the recommended one now is WinRE for Windows 10 and Windows 11. If you were doing something with Linux, it would say Linux.
Yeah. All I know is you have to have a later version of Acronis if you want to use USB 3 drives or a USB 3 hub than using drives. because had issues going through a USB 3 hub. Was
I haven't-
fast.
I haven't had a problem whether I was on USB 2 or 3 so far anyway. Knock on wood.
Well, like I said, earlier versions of Acronis before 2015, I think, maybe 2014, one of them had an issue with trying to do restores on the USB 3 and like, yeah.
Okay.
So I found that one out the hard way. Oh, there's a fix here. Download this.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before I start the presentation?
So
Okay.
Wait, Ed,
Yes. Oh,
I
you got
just
a
want to
hand
make
raised.
an announcement real quick.
Sure.
Well, kind of quick. Every people may or may not have noticed or know already though that the society has a YouTube site. Under YouTube, it's be the Chicago Computer Society. I'll put a link to it in the notes. This is where we're posting our meetings, our past meetings, including this one. Will get posted on there, so you can go back and peruse past meetings. Please take some time and look at them. Subscribe. There's a lot of great content in there. And I would encourage everyone to subscribe, so this way you get to see them. But also, many of the meetings do not have footnotes on what the subjects are. So I'm asking for you to watch one video, just one, from beginning to end, and take notes on what the topics were and send that to me in an email, and I will update the YouTube site to reflect that information. And if you could put down timestamps on there, that would be helpful. I know Bob has offered to go through his notes, and he's willing to be able to give me some of that information that will help on these. But I'm asking everybody to take some time, look at the videos. For those that don't have any notes on some of the older ones that I obtained from Jerry Sass's computer, so I don't have information on those. And I'm sorry, I did not take time to review all these YouTubes. There's a lot of content in there, and I don't have 40 hours to put into this.
Sanford, I only found videos that were from the period of time when we've been on Zoom.
Right.
And also I only found about 8 of them. Is that correct?
You mean on the YouTube site?
Yeah.
There should be, let's see, I think there's 20 of them up there now.
Oh, I'll check again.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not like there's 150 of them,
in
are
this
there?
meeting, because when I Google it, I come up with, again, I'll put in the link in there. I come up with all the videos, but if something's awry, I don't know what it would be, but I'll be happy to look into it.
Yeah, I'll see whether I can see more of them. There were several, but I didn't see, I think, as many as 20. But that may have changed.
Okay. Well, it shouldn't have changed, but I get what you're saying. I'm looking right now, and you say only 8, and I see 3, 2, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 of them are up there right now.
I'll check again.
Okay, and I'll put that link in right now for everybody. And please subscribe to this. I put a lot of work into this.
How does YouTube catalog that stuff, and how do you have it catalog just to the Computer Society and not become part of the general trash that's on there?
Harry, maybe I don't understand your question. Maybe pose it to me again a little differently.
It's a channel.
Okay, YouTube CCS is a block of its own, and the things that are put in there are not cataloged along with other things that might drift into it?
Well, no, I branded it to the Chicago Computer Society. So it's a branded channel. This way, if you go into YouTube and you type the Chicago Computer Society, you will be able to find it. In addition, I put the logo on there. So if that kind of helps you, it's branded specifically for us. And it is a public channel.
Yeah, when I
Yeah.
went into it and looked at it, I found some of the CCS stuff, but it seemed like there was a lot of other things intermixed along with it.
You mean on the same page?
Well, yeah, they came up because if you played one of them, you have the usual stack down the side that shows you other things that are on there.
Yes, there is stuff intermingled. And the reason why that is that it's like an ad to lead you to another channel.
Right.
But it then continues with ours. And then it does it again. It intersperses a few videos that aren't ours in the public view. If you subscribe to the channel, maybe that won't happen.
Yeah. And also,
Okay, I'll try
you've
that.
got to be on the page of the channel that has the logo, the CCS logo is in the upper left, and it'll say a header across the top. It'll say the Chicago Computer Society.
Yeah, I saw that. I just didn't subscribe to it at the time, but by doing that, apparently you get everything. Like he said, as in advertising down the side, like otherwise.
Right. Currently, we have 22 subscribers, so that's good. We just needed to get another 100 in there.
Yeah, I'm able to find them all, but there is other stuff interspersed.
Okay.
But that's the public view without subscribing.
Okay, that could be because if you subscribe, I suspect it'll be differently.
Subscribe and it'll filter.
Subscribe.
Yeah. Well, why not? It's free.
It's like PBS.
Okay. But I have to log in.
All right. Sorry, sorry, Ed. Please.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can do the right share screen. Let's try this one first. Oh, this is the wrong one. This is a little bit older.
2004. Do we have that one? Do we have the video of that?
You do not have a video of it. I have 137 PowerPoints of things that I've presented.
Oh my gosh.
I just counted them. I'm not sure if it counted the PPTXs as well. There were 36 of those. Yeah, so let's try a different share. Okay, this is the one I think you want. Okay, smart plugs. Oops, let's go back. Previous slide. Okay, so for purposes of this presentation, I'm using the term smart plugs for devices that are Wi-Fi or 802.16.4 connected, also known as Zigbee, internet-controlled power devices. And what is a smart plug? Well, it's actually technically a smart socket, okay, because you plug something into it, but everyone calls it a smart plug. Plugs into a power outlet, but has internet connectivity, and you're able to control it to turn it on, off, dim, or do other things with it through typical, through an IoT type of network. Smart plugs are manufactured by several companies. I have a couple that I've found from Belkin, TP-Link, Wise, and there are others. But those big three right there are almost the same physical design. And if you look inside of them, which I have some pictures, you'll see they're very similar inside as well. So where do you use these things? They love to be used in home automation, in smart homes. If you don't have it built into the outlet, well, then you can plug this thing in and retrofit an existing house to have smart capabilities. And you can have the control of these things via Alexa, Google Home, or via an app, which is supplied by the vendor of the outlet of the smart plug. They come in many flavors, including switches you can mount inside the wall and replace the light switch. Three-way switches, anything with 120 volt supply can usually be controlled up to about 18 amps. 15 to 18 is usually the top end on some. Some are only rated at 10 to 12. Some are smart plugs with monitoring to know how much power is used by the appliance while it's plugged in. So it'll capture how much power it's used over a period of time. Cost on these devices, it varies. Low end is maybe down to $12 for some of the no names, maybe as high as 80 for some of the higher end ones, depending on the features, dimming, use, energy use, etc., which increase cost. So with either of the big three, the interface to Alexa or Google Assistant is pretty straightforward. You first need to configure the switches. You download an app, okay, which connects to this switch via its broadcasted. It broadcasts a specific Wi-Fi signal, which includes its MAC address, so it's unique. And you connect to it, and then you configure it by giving it your normal network SSID and password, and then it can reconnect to your network, and now you can control it from that point on. You can enable remote access, which add the Google Assistant or something like that. If this, then that access, if you want to use some of that type of controls and you want to pay for a license. Updating firmware and manually switching the devices on and off, or you can set rules up to automatically turn on devices. One of the rules I have for one of my lamps is turn on at sunset, turn off at 12:02. And whenever sunset is, that time of the year, it knows when sunset is. And it's right on to the minute. So when the minute or the second turns, like, it's sunset, click. So looking at these three, I defy you to really tell too much of the difference between all of them. They all look like they're astounded little faces. Here's inside of the Wemo, okay? This is the main connection where you can see where the plugs are, the socket, and then the plug is on the other side of this. And this is the power supply and relay connection. I think this is the relay. And this is the control board. Here's CASA, also has a very similar, here's the same type of setup. Here's the connections, here's the board, and here is the controller right here. And they usually have chips on the other side of the board so you can't see it. And here's the WISE. WISE, the controller board, is this little thing sticking out here that's soldered into the main board and a larger relay. So even though these are three different manufacturers, they're real close to each other in designs. They all have an internal relay with a power supply and the control board. They may have one or two fuses at various locations inside of this thing in case it's stressed beyond its design limits. It'll pop a fuse and it may have to be opened to repaired. The control board typically runs either Linux or a subset of Linux. Typically, open WRT images are used. Because if you go into the open source for these sockets, if they have open source available, you'll see them referencing both BusyBox and OpenWRT images, which means that's what they use to create it. In fact, the control chip, at least in the Wemo, is a Wi-Fi router controller, which is a MIPS chipset, 350 megahertz with 32K cache memory, and it supports external RAM and flash ROM. It also has a 256 kilobit RAM, which is 32 by 8, and 128 megabit serial flash. So it's actually got almost more flash than a lot of routers do. And then you can look at, I've got links here for both the RA link specification and an EDN teardown by Brian Dilput. Configuring. So when these are configured, because they're based on a router technology, the app is used as both the interface to the support server and to the device. So you they could charge in the future, but they don't currently do it. So because it's based on a Wi-Fi router implementation, it's pretty easy for it to broadcast an SSID, and you can connect to it, and you got no internet, but you can talk to the application to configure it. So as long as you can configure it to use a 2.4 gigahertz 802.11 BGN router, you're good to go. Most of these are supporting 802.11n at 2.4 gigahertz. So you don't have to have a B or G broadcast if you don't need it. And once it's communicating with the vendor server, then it'll get downloads. It will get updates as needed. You manually have to apply the updates that lets you control when you should get an update. It'll remind you, said, you got updates, you want a new firmware, I can do this. And it will reflash over these units. So there's enough room for this thing to reflash and put it into the serial NOR and be able to reboot on it and then come up with the new image. Control on these devices almost always done through an app. You can allow voice commands through your assistant, your choice. But normally you don't have a Windows capability. So if you want to do Windows, there's no browser interface that controls one of these apps. There may be one out there that I haven't stumbled upon, but these big three, not a single one of them supports, a browser window into their server. Now you can use an Android simulator under Windows to control it because basically you're running an Android image on their virtual machine. For Wemo, there is a public domain command line interface that uses curl. Curl is one of those Linux utilities that's fully implemented in Windows 10. So you can crank this thing loose and you can turn your Wemo devices on and off with a command line option. For older operating systems, you may have to go get the version of curl that you want. I loaded one on a Win 7 machine and it worked just fine. So here's an example of actually using that Wemo batch file that actually has a command called scan. And I said, scan this and find my Wemo devices. And there's a couple of them that it found. Other communication options. There's another communication option that is coming into presence. It's called Thread. I don't know if any of you have heard about Thread or come across it, but it is an 802.15.4 technology, which is 2.4 gigahertz as well, sort of like 6 Zigbee, and it can also be known as 6LoWPAN, which uses IPv6 packets that are encapsulated inside of Zigbee frames. And they also can use DTLS, datagram TLS, which is based on UDP and not TCP. So it keeps track of the packets that are lost and is able to resend the packets that are missing, but it doesn't have some of the throttling issues that TLS has. It's also, Thread is intended for extremely low power operation. So Thread is more likely used in a network for temperature sensors that are running on coin batteries, and maybe door sensors, or maybe smoke detectors or other things. So all of these things can be connected via this Thread mesh network. So your devices can help communicate. One device can help communicate to another. Devices with coin batteries can go to sleep for long periods of time and not only wake up when they think they need to do something. So it's not open source, but it has options for developers. If you want to be a member, then you have to pony up some amount of money and become a developer. But I'm seeing some of these remote control devices which now also support Thread. So in case you're wondering what that is, that's what it is. If this, then that. If this, then that is kind of interesting. There used to be unlimited number of applets that you could put in, but now if you want a free if this, then that, you can only have 3 applets. You can use the same applets on multiple devices. It's just you can only have 3 unless you want to pay more. If you want 5, you got to pay some more per month. If you want pretty much closer to an unlimited, it's going to be about 10 a month for the pro subscription. I have not subscribed to if this, then that, but this is the kind of things you can do. Like you can have an if this, then that that says when it sees your phone come onto your Wi-Fi network, automatically turn on the light. If you don't have a rule, you can have sunset, turn on the lights. So there's one built into Wemo, but I don't think it's available on some of the other plug manufacturers. Sunrise, turn off the lights. Again, I think Wemo has sunrise and sunset, but it doesn't have other ones. doesn't have anything that connects it to motion detect. They say you have a connected camera which interfaces with if this then that. So if it detects motion, it can either send you an email or turn on the lights, or it can arm a system, arm the alarm. It could do a lot of things. So there's a lot of things that you can do. There's on the CASA, I think it was the CASA website, that they have a whole bunch of different TP-Link that likes to support the if this then that. I'm not sure. Maybe it was the WISE. One of those two, either on the WISE websites or on the CASA. Look on there if you want to do a lot of those. There are caveats to using this. Although I see them putting in multiple smart plugs right next to each other on the same outlet strip, it has been my experience that that will be fraught with problems because one device will work and the other device will not. And the reason might be because they are they're interfering with each other because they're too close proximity. When you have two devices right next to each other and they're both trying to communicate with Wi-Fi, the strong signal of the one device can basically cause the other device's receiver to be overloaded and swamped and distort all traffic that is trying to receive, in which case it won't receive anything, and it might even fall off the network. If it was in the middle of a handshake at the time, it'll fail the handshake and it'll disconnect. So if you see devices that are disconnecting, reconnecting, you probably got them too close. If you're much closer than about 6 feet, you can start to see this issue. Sometimes that's right about the minimum, the closest that you want to get is about 6 feet. Same outlet strip, you're definitely not going to get it to work. Also, you may need to engineer your coverage if you're using only Wi-Fi and you're not using Thread with Zigbee. You may need to either have a mesh router set up or have another access point so you have coverage behind the couch where you normally don't operate your computer, or next to the metal filing cabinet, which is going to block a whole lot of signal. So you got to be careful of the locations you're putting it. You can always put an extension cord into one of these things to control your device, but sometimes that's ungainly. Other note, this is most of the devices that are in the market today only support 2.4 gigahertz, and mainly for the distance that they can go. They support 802.11n, so they have better range. But with 2.4 gigahertz, more than likely you have a problem with interference from other neighbors and such. So you may have some issues with that. It'll probably be better if some of them can be using the 802.15.4 Zigbee, because with Zigbee, there's less of a chance of getting clobbered, unless you got the idiot upstairs who's using 40 megahertz 802.11n on his Comcast router, and he's clobbering 2/3 of the 2.4 gigahertz band, and he's running extra power. The power level on these devices can be higher than some computers, okay? I noticed the Wemo devices can deliver over 300 milliwatts of power, which is okay for an 802.11 device, but it's not typically seen on anything that is next to your human body, because it's expected to be behind the couch. You're not going to be sitting on top of it. And that's what my presentation was. Anybody got questions? Silence. Oh, everyone's muted. That's why.
And thanks for the program.
Okay. I mean, it's just something that I had been interested in. I recently started playing with this curl utility. I mean, I'd seen it before, but with curl, you have a whole lot of options. I mean, it can transmit FTP packets. It can use various forms of TLS, HTTP, can access just about any server, download any number of files. It's works in a drawer. It can do IPv6, IPv4. You can tell it what you want it to do, and it'll do TLS versions 0, 1, 2, 1.0, 1 than that. So, and that's just the one that's built in on Win 10 and not the one that's available on, here, I'll show you what the option screen looks like on it. It just did a curl dash help. So let me do that. Okay. So this basically is all the commands that are built into curl.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's all into the, and tar exists on Win 10 as well. Okay, so I mean, I did a tar just to check to see if tar was there. Yep, tar is there, and curl are both in Win 10. If you want to do it on something older like Win 7, well, you can download, get off of GitHub, one of the tar images, or you can get curl as well. I found a pre-built curl image that worked just fine on my Win 7 to 32 machine.
Oh.
And this wasn't even the dash verbose.
Oh.
Let's see. Curl dash version. Oh, sorry. I didn't do dash, sorry. Got to be picky on these things. Dash, nope, that's equal sign. Dash. With the security patches too. Protocols, dictionary format file, FTP, FTPS, HTT, HTTPS, IMAP, IMAPS, POP3, POP3S, SMT, SMTPS, Telnet, and TFTP. Async DNS, IPv6, large file support, Kerberos, all of that. SSL, built into the same thing. What a utility. But you have to be pretty much a fan of Linux and command line mode to really appreciate it.
So Ed, are you saying that you could put in the IP, you could do a tar and then the IP address to the device that's on your network and then see?
I don't know if you can pipe it to curl, because pipes under Windows don't quite work as nice as pipes under Linux.
Okay.
So, but you couldn't use a tar and then specify a remote mounted volume. That seems to be one of the better ways to always run tar anyway. I remember people using tar and piping it to the remote mag tape unit. And I mean, it would work, but it was better to have the tape on the local machine and then tar the remote file system, because the access to the files would be UDP and the access to the serial out, the STDIO would be via TCP. But if you put it to a remote disk file system, you're basically using UDP there as well. Smart outdoor plug for whose brand?
Aldi.
Aldi. Oh no.
Aldi.
Is that, was that the last one?
No, they had two of them there, and I grabbed one.
And it connects via Wi-Fi?
Yes, it does. Wi-Fi enabled.
Wow. I don't know where you get the app for it, but remember, there's a 2-year warranty on it, implied.
QR code, you just scan that, and it gets you right to it.
Yeah.
So
the only problem I run into with the apps is then you get so many different kinds of apps. I know that some things, I don't know if Wemo will let you connect and control more than one house at a time. I didn't get into those kinds of things.
that is the problem you run into it. For instance, I got the smart plug, and I have another older smart plug that I don't use much because it's really old, and I'm kind of leery about if it's safe at all to use on my network. But then I also got the Felt Electric, F-E-I-T, Fight Electric.
Right. Yeah.
I got the smart bulbs from them. So you need an app for that. You need an app for that outlet. You need an app for this one. And got a thermometer, a Wi-Fi enabled thermometer that sits in my freezer in case my freezer should clunk out. It'll send me a notification. Don't know how well that's going to work.
How well does it get outside the middle box?
It actually It gets outside the box. I'm surprised. I've tested it and it works.
It probably goes through the rubber seal okay.
It seems to get through the rubber seal. I have no problems in my household getting, connecting up to my network with that device.
It
So
will not work inside a microwave oven, though. They seal that against
Yep.
2.4. You figure when there's 1,000 watts of RF on the inside, you don't want more than a couple milliwatts getting out anyway.
right. So the point is that to further what you were stating is now you need an app for each one of these devices.
Yeah.
And then you got to remember which one does what, and then you got to remember how you configured it.
Right.
It's just
Well,
a lot. To
if you get into the details, you might be able to do the same thing that I was able to do with curl and a batch file with Wemo, which is communicating through port 49153. And I'm pretty sure that some of these other devices communicate in other high numbered ports like 51,210 or something like that. So they may communicate similarly on these other ports and have a similar command structure that you could use a utility like curl to manipulate and turn it on, turn it off, see where the devices are. And, or show me what of the status of all the devices, and then it'll go and interrogate all of them.
Right.
So those kinds of things may work. I don't know on some of the others if they would have a control, but I would look and see, is there a command line interface for the smart switch you're trying to deal with? And you could do some, if you connected it via an open Wi-Fi, an open SSID for test, you could possibly then use Wireshark or something to capture packets. If you can capture the packets and see the packet, it's similar to something else. Usually you can infer a lot of this. Or you can try and look at the open source and see if there's anything that clues you in on the open source of the format of the packet. Because people have been hacking these things for a while. In fact, some of them, they open up the smart switch and tap right into the chipset and download new firmware on it. So there's a group set. There are groups out there that go into that. I think it was a TP-Link group that was going beyond, over and beyond, because TP-Link makes a whole lot of Wi-Fi connected devices. So does Wise. Wise and TP-Link and Belkin. They're all in the same area where they're all making remote cameras, remote thermometers, remote temperature sensors. I mean, they're starting to compete with the thermostat people, and the thermostat people will do if this, then that as well. So at some point in time, maybe it makes sense to have the if this, then that server access and have it all consolidated there.
Does anyone else here in the group use smart plugs?
God, we're the
Sid
first.
does.
Sid is, yeah.
Anyone else? Does anyone use dumb plugs?
I've used the dumb plugs, yes. But
Okay.
the problem with those is the range.
Okay. Yes. The dumb plugs are what I'm referring to. Those are the ones that are like IR blaster style, where you get a fob that has multiple buttons on it, and it actually controls an outlet plug on the wall, but it does not go through Wi-Fi. It only sends an RF signal between the remote and the plug.
Right.
And they're not smart. I call them.
Well, those are like garage door frequencies. They're at 350 megahertz or something
Right.
like that is what they're usually broadcasting. So they have some range.
And they work really good. I use them on lights in the house quite a bit because you don't have to worry about a phone. You got the remote on the table, another remote on the table, and you just.
I used to use one as a security device.
Okay.
When I had to maintain my parents' house and there was nobody living in it, and I wanted to use the garage door as an access, I would frequently find somebody who had a similar control that would open the garage door. So I ended up putting one of these devices I think I got from Big Lots and plugged it in place, and then I could turn the garage door. It was a real old Stanley garage door opener because it had limited room in the area above it to put the guts, so it had to be flush with the ceiling. But I would turn off the garage door, click. I had one for both. I had two of them, so one for each garage door. Turn off one, turn off two. When I would get there, I could turn them both on, and I could open both doors with the push button. But yeah, they work to an extent, but the range is dependent on how fresh that coin battery is that you just put in the remote. Another one that I've used is a Shop Fox. Are you familiar with that one? It's about 20 years ago, they came out with a box and a couple of controls, and you use it to control your shop vac when you want to use dust collection. So you can push a button, and I take this thing outside with me when I'm trying to clean out the gutters, and I have the vacuum hooked up to my portable cyclone, and I'm sucking out all the leaves and the water and everything that goes into the cyclone bucket instead of into the shop vac. And then when I want to turn it off and I'm up on a ladder, I can just reach in my pocket, push the button, and it turns off.
Nice.
Especially when the hose falls off and it's trying to suck up half the yard and the ornamental figures in the yard and that kind of stuff.
It's luck it's not going with a cat or a dog or a bird.
Yeah, squirrels, got one.
It's buried in the yard. You're okay, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I've used that one's nice because it's 15 amp. But some of those are only rated at 675 watts, so you have to be careful on those. But the nice thing about these, the outlets that have rules that you can say like sunset, I stopped using timers for my lights that I connect with. I just said turn on at sunset, because I don't have to worry about changing it when there's a time change. It automatically gets time signals from the internet, so it's always right, even if there's been a power failure.
Now, does it detect sunset by how much light is in its environment?
No, it knows where it is.
In other words, it uses tables.
No,
I'm sure it's using a table of some sort,
Or
or
it gets it from the
it's
internet.
doing it from the server. The server tells him, okay, I know where this guy's located. I know where his home address is. Sunset will be at 4:29 tonight.
So it's not literally detecting sunset, and
No.
therefore, if you have a dark cloud come over, it won't.
No, it does not turn on because of that. I used to have the light sensors, and then I used to see people when they misconfigured the light sensors, and you have flashlight. Or they had a defective LED light that just flash.
Yeah, I've got an LED like that in my kitchen. It's flickering.
I mean, I would love to be able, I've sort of considered what it would take to replace the one that goes out to my street light, which is embedded in an outlet box. I don't know if I'd get enough coverage, but I thought about getting a Wemo for that one as well, setting him up, and then I never have to worry about setting it again next time there's a power failure. As long as I have my router here, it'll remember it. And if the Wi-Fi is down, it still remembers what time to turn on and off. Which I thought was kind of nice. Yes, Sid.
Three things. One, I can't get Wemo out of my head now. Thanks a lot for that. I mean, that whole Mighty Jungle thing just keeps going through my head. But what
I was going to put something like that in my presentation, but I said, no, I'll let Sid do it.
There you go. Second, are you going to upload the presentation?
Sure will. Let me go ahead and do that.
Because it would be useful. I mean, my problem is I'd like to change out some of the light switches, but I've got $800 estimates to change one switch out.
Why $800?
Because they're not three-way, they're four-way. And the electricians I've talked to are, it's major work to figure it out, and we don't know how long it's going to take. So we'll charge you $600 to $800 to come out and do it. And I'll get up and hit a light switch before I'll pay $600 to $800 to change it out.
There's a limited way to do a four-way. Four-way is nothing more than the Travelers. I think any three-way electronic outlet will work in a four-way connection if it's been wired correctly and they didn't change between. If they wired them all consistently, you would have no problem with it.
Yeah, right. This house, I have a basement window that was installed backwards with the hardware on the outside.
Well, naturally.
And instead of fixing it, They just unscrewed the hardware and left little holes on the outside. And then they put an L bracket on the inside to close it, to lock it.
Doesn't it snap out and plug in and you can turn it around and put it on the right way? Don't you have the ones that pop out?
I'm not sure. The basement windows are a little bit different.
Okay.
So I'm really not quite sure on that. And it's not a window I've cared to do that. This house isn't that old. It was built in 99.
Well, mine was built in 85 and I have windows that are meant to be pulled out in the basement so as fire egress.
Yeah, I have a sledgehammer. It will open the windows in emergencies. But
The first night I moved into the first house I purchased, there was a windstorm and some of the construction debris in the neighborhood took out one of my basement windows. So they had to turn around and get me a new basement window as a condition of finishing the closing on it because we just partially done stuff.
And I'm not sure if it's me, Ed. I have had 2 LED BR30s die in the last couple of weeks. And I didn't think they'd been around long enough to start dying already on those things.
The one thing I've noticed is when they start to flicker, and it happens with the higher powered ones more than the lower powered ones. When they start to flicker, there's a capacitor. I think it's a capacitor inside. I've taken them apart and I've sort of looked at it and I can see the capacitor starting to leak. I think they've over-temped some of the stuff because I will measure the outside of the bulb of the LED and it'll be at 60 Celsius. So it's cooking. You don't want to touch this. You'll get a burn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're BR30, so they're in cans.
But it depends on whether they're designed to burn base down or base up, or if there's any air circulation around the thing. On some of these things where I put in brand new 100-watt equivalent into these closed fixtures with a light shell that went on the ceiling, I've loosened the nut that holds the light shell so there's a little gap of air so the heat can escape, and we're going to see how long they last now. But I had to do that. I had several of those bulbs fail in less than a year. But they're very heat sensitive. If you have a lot of open area or they're burning base down, no problem. Burning base up, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Because the heat is focusing back in.
And of course, this is in a track, and most track stuff is base up.
Well, some of the track stuff has holes in the back and it's supposed to let the heat out. But I don't know of the design of yours if they have that. They could also fix that if they were to put like an aluminum thing around the base of the unit so that it could conduct the heat away from the electronics and have air circulation on the outside of the bulb that would cause it to pull the heat away. I mean, I got some other bulbs that I'm using and they're also being used base up, but I've snapped off the plastic shell off of the LED. So it looks like it's about this tall and air can circulate around the electronics. And I'm getting a lot more than 1600 lumens out of each one. Of course, I'm replacing commercial lighting with this. Instead of burning a 500-watt halogen, I'm using 400-watt LEDs using about 60 watts. Yeah. Who else? Did somebody raise their hand? I missed it. No, it's just somebody's background is falsing.
I noticed a kitty behind Tim right now.
Yeah.
Which one?
It's a dark one. It's facing away at the moment. So it's looking at the lamp right now. It looks like.
On my side. I had both of them here, one on each side.
Didn't climb on the keyboard, huh? Help you type.
I haven't had any get on my keyboards of all the cats I've had.
We used to have ones that would walk across the piano in the middle of the night. That's really spooky when you start hearing the piano going like.
Well, the funny thing about that, and I can't remember off the top of my head right now, there's a piece of software that I've got that I run under a Windows system, and it actually has a cat. So if you got a cat that gets on the keyboard like you're talking about, you just turn that feature on, and it won't. The cat won't trip it.
Yeah, but I wonder how much feature there is in it. Is it looking in the camera to see if it's a cat, or it's you that's trying to meow and pretend you're a cat?
I don't know. I think I'm speculating that it's as a paw gets down on the keyboard, it's doing multiple keys. It says, "Oh, this is probably a cat, not a human doing."
No, it's N key rollover in the keyboard, and I don't think you can sense that on most apps. I think a keyboard controller filters some of that stuff out. I just wondered what it's sharing to be able to do that. Show me a picture of your keyboard. I want to see if it's a paw or a finger. So I thought,
I don't know, Ed, if you remember, in olden days, they had mechanical timers that did random. So you wouldn't be a pattern. So if you were out of town, it would flip at random times. So
I probably have one or two of those with the random feature, and it would random around 15 minutes either side of its set point. So it really wasn't truly random. You didn't get the light turn on at 3 a.m., but it would vary it around that time of day. And I remember the old photoelectrics, because they don't always work either, because the photoelectric cell wears out eventually and you have to replace it on a fixed system. I have one of those at our church right now where the photoelectric doesn't work, and it just turns on the light anyway. It's got to be really bright light for it to say, oh, there's sunlight out here. It's shining on me. It's coming in this window. I should turn off. Yes. I see somebody else is taking over your keyboard, Sid.
I don't think I've ever seen one for the dog on the keyboard.
Well, it depends. All you need to do is put a Slim Jim on your keyboard. You'll have a dog there. Has to be a reason for the dog to come over. Or in the case of one of the dogs we had, a carrot will work. He used to think that carrots were dog treats, because I would feed the rabbit that we had, and I'd break off the end of it for him, leave it on the counter, and then he would, if he didn't want to wait for me to come back upstairs, he would automatically grab it himself. Bad habit to get into. But even though Huskies are not known for their smelling ability, we had this game we would play. I would take a carrot and I would drag it along the edge of the baseboard and go all the way around the room, almost make a circumnavigate the house with it, and then hide the carrot in a corner behind a chair or something. And I would say, treat, treat. And shoom, you just watch this nose stick to the baseboard going exactly where I went, followed around to go around in a circle and back here and there. And then finally finds out. Yes, he loved that game. Yeah, and you could just sit there and flip him carrots all the time. I know you're not supposed to give dogs grapes, but one time a green, really crisp green grape fell on the floor, and it was about the size of a small Super Bowl almost. And Kojak looked at it, and it went into his mouth, and it came back out again. Went into his mouth, went back out again. And he did this like a dozen times, and I'm rolling on the floor laughing. And then all of a sudden he clips it with his tooth, like, oh, it's edible. But I don't recommend doing that with dogs, because it's supposed to be damaging to their kidneys if they have too many of those.
Yeah, the easier way is I once dropped a cherry tomato, and the dog, same thing. Yeah,
it was hilarious. I mean, I could not stop laughing after watching this. I wish I had a video of it. This is one of those things that does 250 million hits. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had lots of pictures of animals doing strange things, but nothing quite like that. So, subjects for future meetings. Any recommendations? Well, we got a couple minutes here. Think, 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 think. I don't have.
I want a way to get my Google Mini speakers talking to my Echo speakers so they can hold their own conversations.
You actually can do that if you do some of the diagnostic. If you actually go in, I know that we got this Google Home Assistant for my son-in-law because he was experimenting with it, and he actually programmed it to say some things at random times. So you can tell it to say whatever you want, and then that could actually talk to your other favorite assistant, and I'm sure they would argue to death. Have one say something derogatory about the other. Like, who is it? Aykroyd used to talk to Jane Curtin in the Weekend Update. Alexa, you ignorant.
And then Siri can be the tiebreaker.
Yes, and Siri will be listening to the whole thing and said, "You two are idiots." I don't have an Alexa yet, unfortunately. I do have a thermostat that will support Alexa. It's waiting for me to get off my posterior and rewire the 8-wire cable through the wall down to the furnace. But I think that wasn't the best thing to try and do in the middle of winter.
Well, not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah. I mean, if you need it, I have one of the whatever things that you can put on that you don't need to run a wire for.
Well, I wanted to run the extra wires so that I could conceivably control the thermostat and the humidifier at some point in time from upstairs, instead of having to go all the way downstairs and. Yes.
Ed, is that a Nest?
No, it's an Ecobee.
It's an Ecobee. Okay, I don't know anything about the Ecobee, but I know on the Nest, we actually had to hook up a transformer and a capacitor, I think, or something, or a diode or something. Not a diode, a transistor also. So there had to be two things that had to be hooked up to make it work with my Air humidifier. The other thing is you could theoretically take the 8-wire, tie it to the current 4-wire, and pull the 4-wire through.
Yeah.
Pull the other one back down with it.
Well, I have access to the entire basement. All I have to do is get it through the wall here down about 6 feet, and I'm there. So I have no problem running the wire. It's just doing it. And then crawling over all of the stuff in the basement that is collected over 35 years.
Now, is the Ecobee one that's smart censored, that it knows when you're home and you're not home?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you make sure that you put that unit in a room that you're almost always going by.
Unfortunately, it's not when I'm always going by.
So
I have to tell it I'm always home.
You don't need to do that. They have what's called the Lil Bees, the little sensors. I have 3 of them in different rooms, and you can actually schedule different rooms. So if you have a sleep program, it will go towards what the bedroom sensor says versus what daytime, where it will be more what the living room, family room says.
Right. I have one of the remote sensors that came with this one. So I have to get some of the extra ones in case I want to put it in other rooms as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they've every year at Black Friday, they've done a big deal on the add-on Little Bees. $22 for a 2-pack.
See, I need to get some of those. I've had this one in the box ever since ComEd gave it to me for almost a song and a dance. And I think I got to install that sometime. But the size of this thing is going to be much larger than the previous thermostat. So,
does anyone know if there's any rumors about Nest being shut down?
What?
I said rumors. Anyone know of anybody?
Well, I know that Google likes to get rid of some things after a while.
Right. And they haven't been doing anything with the products.
Well, they've been bringing out add-on products. They have the Nest Light thing, which is like the Nest Spotlight, and some Nest security stuff they've brought out.
Well, they say they've committed to, on Ars Technica in 2021, they said committing to support Nest smart home devices for 5 years. Okay, so at least until they detract, decommit from that, and they erase it from all web pages so that you won't even know where you saw it.
So if they decide to stop supporting it, does that mean they would shut down their servers that work with the units eventually?
I'm not sure, or at least what I would expect if they're going to shut it down, I would petition them to offer to, I want it to go to my own server and I'll support it remotely myself.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, they might want to avoid keeping the product officially supported once they shut down their servers, for the exact reason that the Western Digital My Books got into trouble. If you don't keep updating the firmware and the programming, somebody's going to hack it, and then terrible things could happen.
I'll throw out this one point, though. I know what you're saying, Bob. A home thermostat is a lot different than a hard drive in terms of functionality. People install these with the anticipation that they are going to last 10 to 20 years or whatever
Right.
the time frame is that people
Yeah.
anticipate, because they're part of a home. A home is,
Right.
it's a different concept of thinking when it comes to your home. It should not be something you're replacing every 10 years on a thermostat. Okay, a carbon monoxide detector, a smoke detector, those are understood. But the other things, I just throw that as a thought,
I mean, if they
Yeah.
were going to discontinue it, I would be sitting here hooking up a Raspberry Pi Zero in its place and hooking up a display to it and basically doing that. I'm sure more than one person has probably came up with that idea, making their own smart thermostat.
Didn't this just tie in with Blink?
I think I'm not sure. Now, Blink is Amazon, but Nest is Google still, so I'm not sure what they may have arranged. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it went to Blink with Alexa and Ring and all that, and the Amazon stuff, I guess is what I was.
Well, I know that the Ecobee would be more likely because Ecobee supports Alexa, so they're in with Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a new Ecobee 5 out or something like that they were showing, and I think I saw it at Lowe's in their display panel.
Yeah. I think mine is a 3. That's how long I've had this thing. It's a 3 plus or something like that. It's got the Alexa, but it can't, I don't know if it can play music. That's the only thing I'm not sure, which would be kind of weird coming out of your thermostat anyway. Yes, Sid.
Yeah, there was announced last November, Generac is acquiring Ecobee, by the way.
Generac.
Yep.
The standby generator people.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Which is also, they own Chamberlain.
Oh, they do too. Yeah.
They're paying $200 million in cash and $450 million in GNRC common stock.
Wow. Ecobee. Well, that was interesting because Ecobee was a Canadian company too. I'll have to look into that one. My support site might change by the time I install this thing.
Well, they probably figure it will generate more revenue for them.
That's a good one. Yeah. No, what I will do is I'll hook this thing up, and the first thing it'll say is there is another.
Yeah.
Anyone recognize that reference?
Colossus, the Forbidden
Project.
was it somebody Braden was the actor in that? I think it was for Eric Braden.
Yes, but the big thing was, so Colossus was the American one, and Guardian was the Russian computer. Tandem Computers operating system was known as Guardian for their nonstop platforms on the old MIPS chipset multiprocessor machines. Yes. So tandem nonstop computers. Guardian was the OS. Before they went to a Linux one, but the original one was Guardian. I used to work with those two. Very expensive pieces of gear. A 500 megabyte SCSI hard drive cost about 5 times as much when put into a rack mount chassis that could be automatically unplugged and plugged in again. And there was a patent on it. You know what the patent was for trying to keep other people from doing the same thing? On this unit where you put in your SCSI drive and they had the power control and everything like that and had the connector, you think it was something like the power connector where the ground wires are longer than the power connectors. So when the power connector pulls out, it's the first thing to pull out and the last thing to push in. No, it's nothing like that. The patent that they had on the side to keep other people from doing it was the floating locating pin on the back of the thing that made it into a socket. So you made sure you didn't push it in sideways. Locating pin. That was their patent. That was the thing that kept other people from doing the same thing.
Speaking of that, you probably saw the Sonos court decision with Google.
Yeah, there was something about that. I did not go into that in detail.
Sonos actually patented the ability to lower the volume of multiple speakers simultaneously with one command.
Well, that's
so
not.
You could turn down the whole house at one time. They patented that. So Google now had to remove it so that you have to do each speaker individually.
Yeah, but it's probably not an enforceable patent. It was a bad patent to begin with. It should have never been granted. It is not.
Well, no,
novel.
they just won in court, and immediately Sonos went to the U.S. whatever that stops things from being imported, and they put a stop on any of those units coming into the country until they remedied the infringement.
There's so many of these patents out there that would have never passed our patent committee because it's not novel. There's prior art in other areas. All they have to do is find the prior art, which was the main volume control, which shuts down all channels, and a manual thing. That would be my prior art argument. Said I go to the main gain and I turn down the main gain. It turns down all speakers at the same time. How is that novel, Doug? Tell me again.
Well, it's wireless.
I have wireless controls that can do the same thing. I make a wireless main gain control. They've had wireless controls for 30 years. Yeah, nothing novel about that. I'm surprised they granted it. They must have had a real or they paid off the examiner. Something they did. I know they have to pay the examiner, but they paid him extra on the side.
Well, again, this isn't the point of the patent. This is the defense of the patent with Google losing in court.
I know that. Well, Google was not one that was big about developing patent portfolios. They bought patent portfolios. Some of the stuff that I disclosed is in Google's patent portfolio, because they took both the stuff that was disclosed and also the stuff that was actually patented. When they bought in the Motorola Cellular Group, the only thing they really needed Motorola Cellular Group for was all of their patent portfolio. They had 12,000 plus patents that they got when they did that. And unfortunately, a couple of patents that I had in progress were sucked up in that group, and I lost control of it, and they decided not to pursue it. But I'm pretty sure that Google is sort of using some of that stuff now. One of the disclosures I had was a dynamic control of your Wi-Fi based on your location. If you're located, when you got to a certain location, automatically start looking for this hidden Wi-Fi network, which might be your home network. So it knew to automatically, even if your Wi-Fi was turned off, it would turn your Wi-Fi on. And I noticed my phone doing that now. That's something that I disclosed back in 2004. But unfortunately, it got sucked up and disappeared, and haven't seen it since.
That almost sounds like ARC. Where you turn off the TV and it auto turns off the receiver because the ARC back channel tells it that it's been shut off.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a communication where they have, how about the sound bar? I mean, the sound bar controls, remote sound bar controls. That's what Sonos is trying to claim, but they're not the only ones that have that technology. Other sound bar people have that. So how is that a unique thing? I would say, okay, let's see how your remote works. How about my wireless remote for my Roku? Does that turn on more than one speaker? It could turn down all the speakers because it turns it off on the TV. Like I said, it's only novel in a limited area. And the question is, when Google turned down the volume on a Google Home, so if you say turn down your volume 50 to 50%, it does it to every home device that's present or every phone as well?
You have the option of setting up groups. The same with Alexa. You could set up speaker groups.
Okay.
And then you can order that group to be turned down. Or turned
So
up,
if you don't,
or you could do the whole house.
So if you don't have groups, then So if it's only on the concept of groups, that's probably the limited way they were able to get their patent. Because turning down the whole house is turning the whole main game down. That's not novel. There's prior art that would have invalidated that, and they would have thrown their patent and said, I'm sorry, you have prior art, you can't patent it, it's not unique. Yes, I used to look at patents for Motorola for the last 22 some odd years I was working there. 23. Yeah.
New direction. Is anyone in this group a fan of the TV series on Netflix called The Expanse?
I haven't, but don't talk me in the latest season. I haven't gone there yet.
No, this was a topic. I'm sorry the rest of this group is not privy to this TV series, which is based off of a book too, which is a multiple book series. But the one thing that they do in there that I really want to see happen in their computers, is everyone has a handheld device that's basically like a sheet of plexiglass, and it has the displays on there and it projects in front of them. But then the thing that I love the most is when they want to share something with the next person that's in front of them, they literally grab it and they throw it, and it goes to that person's hand terminal, and I want it. I'm
not sure, but I think you can do that on touch screens. If you could grab something and then swipe it to the side, if you've configured a monitor to the other side, I don't think it'll throw it to your other monitor. I don't think it'll throw it to the other computer over there because it doesn't know where the other computer is.
Yeah, there's a gesture like that that'll move an app or an app window to another workspace.
So Ed, I think this is a topic to discuss. Future programming, what it could look like. I don't know.
It'd be like having different workspaces on different monitors.
I tell you, this is, if anyone I'd tell you to watch the TV series or this series just to see how they implement the computers, how everybody in a whole crowd, and they could just grab it like pinching it and pitch it, and everybody has it.
You know how Zoom works? You can select with one finger, you can pinch Zoom with two fingers, you grab it with three, and then you can throw it.
You could just throw it, and it shows up anywhere you put it. You got
But that would be politically incorrect for people that don't have three fingers that they can move. So
okay.
Well, by the time they get that, you'll be able to have a prosthetic that'll do it.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, finger, grab it and throw it.
No, it's just a bionic thing that uses your own nerves.
Voice. You got to tell it, take that window and throw it to the other guy.
No, you don't even need your voice. All you got to do is think it.
And
your own nerves will do it.
Yeah, right.
Ed, how far back are you in the episodes? Are you?
I'm still at the end of last season.
Okay, all right.
So I haven't gotten into this season. I've been watching all this other stuff. I still haven't caught up on Foundation and some of the other things. So
okay, all right.
I got tons of stuff that I haven't watched yet. I have, we just finally struggled through the end of Iron Fist, watched that finish. So that, okay, we finished that one finally.
Wow.
But, yeah, I know. We took our time
Bert,
on
you're
that one.
muted.
Yeah, Bert,
Bert,
you got
you're
on
muted.
mute.
There you go.
Sorry about that. I've been watching old reruns of CSI Cyber,
Yep.
and I've never seen it originally. So I don't know if other people have seen that. It's kind of scary in terms of what they talk about.
Well, it's just like other things in CSI. You just can't read any plate on any video feed that you got. I don't care how much enhancement you have. It doesn't work that way. The only thing that can really see license plates are those, 30 megapixel imagers that they have on the tollway, which are designed to read plates, and they use infrared.
And they use a strobe.
And they use a strobe. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying is that they're designed to read the reflective thing, and that's all they're looking for. They're not looking to see whether or not this guy has a face or not. They're just looking to see what his plate number is. The other camera will take a picture of his face.
Yep.
But I mean, Cyber was always good. Oh, it's enhanced. Let's crop it and enhance. The only thing I get when I crop and enhance is a bunch of large pixels. And I have cameras that I tried to look at a license plate on our feed at our church, and that has 14 megapixel imagers. Okay. And that's, quite detailed, and it fills up 4 terabyte drive on a regular basis and then starts over at the beginning. But you look at some of this stuff and like, they are doing what? And what the reality of the situation is with security cameras, you can either set it up to do wide field, or you can set it to capture a very simple section and zoom in on it, but you can't do both. I mean, it's amazing what they are able to do with some of the zoom feeds to even try and get some of the detail that they are. But if you have a thing where you want to try and recognize a license plate on somebody in the driveway, you better have a camera focused right in the driveway that's making your pictures there.
I guess it's mostly the hacking that, comes to light. That whether it's real or it's impossible, hard to know.
Well, right away when somebody types something and all that comes out is perfectly formatted JavaScript, something else is happening here, and it's not quite everything he's typing. I don't care what kind of editor you got with cut and paste. It's still going to take a lot more typing than that.
What was great was the original Terminator. It had that stuff scrolling, and it was 6502 assembler going by. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this advanced cyber thing is running 6502 code?
No, it's a movie.
Of course, most of it's just movie making and being able to simulate, to tell the story. But, imagine how much work there is just to be able to put those screens up all the time on these programs.
Just remember, the Atari had a cut down 6502 is a 6507 chip, but it could access up to, with memory banking, 4 megabytes, and it only had a 256 byte stack. It's an impressive chip.
There you go. But I don't know. I just finished the 2nd season of The Mandalorian. And what's interesting, if you read about the technology they're using, it's never been done before. They basically made an entire green screen facility in real time generation. So the actors are actually in real time interacting with the CGI stuff going on simultaneously. It doesn't have to be added later. It's there while they're doing what they're doing. It's fascinating stuff. It takes a lot of processing power to do that.
And Baby Yoda has to learn his lines.
And you know whose computers and chips they're using now? They're using Apple M1 Max and M1 Pro. They're actually using RISC chips, but they are chips with huge numbers of graphics cores.
Yeah. Okay. So they're using the super. Yeah. How about HDMI as a topic? You said, Sanford, as well. We could talk about that. The different kinds of HDMI and the different kinds of plugs and where you can get into problems. I'll put that down.
You might, from an article I remember seeing late last year, and that all the types of USB-C cables.
I don't know if I want to go there because there's a USB-C 3.0, 3.1.
This is what I'm getting at. And,
well, there's Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt's basically the same connector.
Yeah.
I have Thunderbolt 3 and there's Thunderbolt 4, and those are basically USB-C Gen 2.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Gen 3 isn't out yet, but they're thinking of making a standard for it too.
Yeah. I mean, the different kinds of HDMI could be, the ones with have the implicit Ethernet in it and that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'll look into that too.
Then you get HDCP on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the HDCP.
And then there's the newer HDCP 2.2, which is just coming out.
Did you say 2.2?
I come up with the way that how they were able to hack and make copies of some of the high def stuff by hacking into an old TV set where they got the HDMI decoded inside the TV set. And the only way to shut it down was to invalidate that TV set, which was very popular. And they would just go into the TV set and add your own direct video and audio out and go record it and do whatever else you wanted to do with it. Amazing.
Ed, I sent you another one.
Okay. ATS3 broadcast. Okay.
ATSC3. Yeah. By the way, there's some question whether or not ATSC3 can ever be, will ever be implemented, because broadcast television may go away by that time.
We'll talk about that when he brings this up as a subject.
Oh, and also the conflict between the 5G and the FAA, the airline devices.
The altimeters, the radio altimeters. They're both in the same band, and the problem is the radio altimeters do not have adjacent channel rejection because they didn't expect to see big transmitters there. They didn't expect to see a directed 5G transmission, which looks like noise to it because it doesn't know how to decode it, because it's using 256 QAM modulation techniques or something like that, and this thing is probably doing FSK.
And yet in Europe they didn't seem to run into too much trouble.
They don't allow the operation on that band in Europe. That's simple.
So it's a different band for 5G.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is in Europe. Europe is definitely different bands in the US. That's why GSM had 1700 and 1800 in Europe long before it had it in US. US had it used in 18 and 19, never used 17.
The other thing I read about Europe is they run on a much lower power. They're a little bit further away from the airports than they are here. And they're also aimed like downward.
They have down tilt, yes.
Yeah, so they're lower power, much lower power, like only 10% of what we have, and aimed in a different direction and further away. So the fact that some of the phone companies are saying, well, it's running okay in Europe, they're not giving you the whole story.
Right, they're not using microcells, they're using full-size cells, and they're trying to handle thousands of streams at the same time, just because of the cost of the backhaul. So, I mean, you could do the same thing. You could just drop microcells out of the back of a KC-135 and have them land attached to everything and just start transmitting, and that would be your coverage problem solved. But you'd have these sites all over the place, sticking on trees and windows, and it would work, and you'd have a low power density that you would need to get coverage from anywhere. But the problem is the backhaul, trying to figure out how to write that all back to the internet, and who's going to be the main hub. Yes. Okay. You got some ideas. I'll see what works out. I'll put them on my big list and we'll see what comes up. Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? Save the chat. Okay. Well, have yourself an excellent evening, folks. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to
Bye,
hit
everyone.
subscribe.
Thank you.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. Hit subscribe.
Yeah, I'll get back to you about my notes, Sanford.